Okay, Tuesday, October 11th. This is a pre-opening SPY video, about an hour and 15 minutes to go before the open. You can see we're kind of getting a bit of a repeat of yesterday, where the pre-market range gapped down pretty big overnight. We're now rallying up a little bit as we speak here towards the highs of that session, but so far this range is well below the midpoint of the prior day, which we're going to keep an eye on, that midpoint of the prior day. Yesterday when we did that, you can see we don't have the range here, but it was near the high of the pre-market and immediately sold off, and we were anticipating that, and we had one push down, two pushes down. So the question is, does that repeat again today? What's happening here is yesterday was kind of the easy day in terms of expecting the immediate downside action because of the way the prior week closed with the shooter bar. We're expecting it to at least test lower, which it did. And the monthly chart, we're kind of seeing that beginning to fail at the midpoint of the prior month with a likelihood to take out the low of that at some point. So that's still in play. The thing is, we did come down and take out that weekly low already. So that sets up a 2-down week, which should get to this target down here, which is the low of the previous week, which also happens to be making a new monthly low, from this big red bar in October, September. So we're still looking to get down there. The question is it going to be, the more and more now we have a 2-down day, 2 days ago, a 2-down day today. So now you're looking at continuation, and that becomes tricky in terms of, are you going to get the smooth momentum towards some of these targets along the way, or are you going to have consolidation first before you get there? We're still going to stay biased to the downside until something changes. But the question is how it's going to unfold here. So I'm kind of monitoring all kinds of possibilities at the open. If we get this red bar, you have to try short again and have a stop quickly here at the midpoint of that first bar, maybe get stopped out and have to try again. If we go up green, you look for some kind of failure. Maybe we'll get that instead of the red bar to start. If we get a big green up, I'm still monitoring the halfway point of yesterday, which is kind of this area right here. The question is, are we going to take out those stops at first and then maybe have some kind of failure, which you can either play that aggressively or you can wait until something comes down and looks to take out the intraday low, that first bar low, whatever that is, and then expect it to continue lower. It's possible you get a strong green up. You just never know. And the green looks like it's going to be a hold above this area. And at that point, maybe we're getting like a green bar to have an up day today, which kind of moves into this fair value gap, which is between the low of that bar and the high of this bar. And this is kind of an area we can fill in before it rolls over to the downside. And, again, I'm not expecting that, but it's always something to keep in mind depending on what kind of open you get here. So the main point here is it gets a little more difficult to determine, how choppy it's going to be now that we kind of reached our first target, which was like setting a new low. From last week, I thought it was easy that you're going to head down here and at least go lower here. Now, since we've made a lower low on the weekly chart, we're definitely projecting down there. So we still have 4 days to go to get there. The question is, how it's going to get there on the daily chart. And there's no real actionable signal, still, because this is still a 2-down day, another 2-down day. So that's not really an actionable signal. We're in actionable territory here to reach this target. And getting back to the monthly chart, even though this is, I'm expecting, since you see a big red bar, you're expecting the lows to be taken out, which happens to align with the low of the weekly bar here, our target. It doesn't mean it's really an actionable, projection. It's just a 2-down continuation move that have these targets down here should we do it. So even on the monthly chart, this isn't really an actionable signal. At any moment, since we hit our target last month, you can reverse at some point, even though there are projections lower if as long as the market continues, on a daily chart to kind of continue lower and just not really reverse up in any way. And again, to me, the reversal is going to have to play at some point on the weekly chart. If this fails to reach this low for some reason, it has some kind of a 2-up bar by the end of the week, and we then have a 2-up week, then I'll start projecting, higher. But until this chart, the weekly really turns, and I'm looking kind of at the midpoint of that bar. That's with this green line here. That's the top of that fair value gap I was talking about. Until this whole chart turns around, I'm still going to stay biased to the downside. Just a question of how we get lower to each and each target. So again, let's kind of keep this pre-range in mind. Depending how we open and either continue immediately or fail up here, we'll look to target this low, and this low is kind of the final, the initial target here, down, towards that weekly low, which kind of gives you that monthly, red bar follow through and everything else. So let's just see, maybe it'll be an exact repeat, and that's what's happening here so far. We're gapping up in the morning, or starting to move higher pre-market, but that sets up the sell right out of the gates. And either way, I'll point out where the tight stops are, and you'll just use that 15-minute chart. That's the key to this whole thing. When you don't really know how it's going to develop, you watch the formation of this bar, of the first bar or so, and then kind of see where the bias is for the day and see where that first directional move is. You look for failures on the upside, or you might get a strong upside move, and that might say the market's ready for a day or two to act as if this is that low, and we get that big, 800-point rally for 2 days in a row. And maybe people think that's going to happen again. Just like on this day it was red, you were thinking possibly lower, but the market said it's going to open higher with a green bar like this. Who knows? Maybe by the end of that pre-market thing, we're up here and we get a green bar and it's a big up move like that. Who knows? So still going to bias the downside. Let's just see how things open. This range is kind of important for that. In the end, with these ranges, you typically want to, if you're going to have a buy day, you're going to have to open up and stay strong above this open, this high of this range right here, wherever it ends up. And typically if you're short, you're going to have to, have an opening bar that moves to the low of that bar when you have a big range, lower the range when you have a big range like that, or you can start reading at the bottom of the range and kind of break below it and hold below it for momentum kind of move. So it sets up a good little window here if we get short, to move down towards that area. That's what I like about these kind of opens typically in a short bias, but you never know. So let's just, again, see how it opens. Just kind of understand the big picture, in terms of, more importantly, the daily, the weekly chart that should be targeting down here, and the monthly bar that still should follow through a little bit from that big red bar in September.